Look closely at your fingertips. Every one of them is covered with tiny ridges. We call their patterns fingerprints. But why are they there? Are they simply there to help us grip things? Do they make our sense of touch more sensitive? Or do they serve several purposes at once? Now look somewhere less obvious. Your feet. Your toes have similar ridges. So do large areas of the soles of your feet. And that creates an interesting problem. If fingerprints exist only to help our hands grip objects, why do our feet have similar patterns? But there is an even stranger mystery. Look at your 10 fingers. They all belong to you. They all contain the same genetic blueprint. Yet no two fingerprints are exactly alike. Now imagine two identical twins. Their DNA is extraordinarily similar. Their faces may look almost indistinguishable. Their bodies developed from the same fertilized egg. Yet even identical twins do not have identical fingerprints. So where do these unique patterns actually come from? The answer begins months before you were born. Long before you touch your first object, your hands are already taking shape. Inside the womb, a developing fetus begins forming fingers and toes. Bones grow. Nerves spread. Skin develops around the growing limbs. And something important begins happening beneath the surface. Temporary swellings, called volar pads, develop on the fingers, palms, toes, and feet. Their size and shape help influence the broad ridge patterns that eventually appear. This is where genetics enters the story. Your genes help control how your skin and limbs develop. They influence the biological conditions under which friction ridges form. That is why fingerprint characteristics can sometimes run in families. But your DNA does not contain a tiny, finished drawing of every ridge. There is no simple genetic blueprint saying exactly where each line must end. Instead, the final pattern emerges while the skin itself is developing. Different layers of tissue grow. The shape of each developing fingertip changes. The volar pads gradually regress. Skin expands across a curved surface. Mechanical forces act on these growing tissues. And extremely small differences begin to influence the result. A ridge curves slightly to one side. Another ridge divides. Another suddenly ends. Thousands of these tiny events combine into one larger pattern. Eventually, familiar forms emerge. Loops, whorls, arches. But those broad shapes are only the beginning. Zoom closer and you find much finer details. Ridge endings, bifurcations, small islands, short ridges, different distances between neighboring features. These microscopic details make each print extraordinarily distinctive. And this explains why calling fingerprints simply random is misleading. They are not completely predetermined by genes. But they are not created by pure chance either. Genetics establishes part of the developmental framework. The details emerge from the complex process of growth. Identical twins provide a remarkable demonstration. They begin from the same fertilized egg. Their genomes are therefore extraordinarily similar. So you might expect their fingerprints to match. And sometimes their broad fingerprint patterns can look similar. One twin may have a loop on a particular finger. The other may have a similar loop. But look more closely. The fine ridge details do not perfectly match. One ridge may split earlier. Another may curve differently. A ridge ending may appear in a different position. Their fingerprints tell two slightly different developmental stories. The same principle applies to your own hands. All 10 fingers share your genome, but each finger develops in its own local environment. Each has a slightly different shape. Each experiences slightly different conditions as tissues grow. So your 10 fingers do not become 10 biological photocopies. They become 10 related but distinct patterns. Your toes follow the same basic principle. Each toe develops its own friction ridge pattern. And ridges also spread across parts of your palms and soles. All of this belongs to a broader system called friction ridge skin. Fingerprints are simply the most famous part of that system. Something else about these patterns is remarkable. They are extremely persistent. Think about how small your fingers were when you were a baby. Your hands grew dramatically as you became an adult. Yet the basic arrangement of your fingerprint ridges remained recognizable. The pattern grows with the finger. It does not normally disappear and generate a completely new design. Everyday life constantly damages the outermost surface of your skin. You touch rough objects. You scrape your fingers. Dead skin cells are continuously shed. New cells replace them. Yet superficial damage usually leaves the underlying fingerprint pattern intact. Once the skin heals, the familiar ridges return. But deeper injuries can be different. If damage reaches structures responsible for maintaining the ridge pattern, scar tissue can form. That scar may permanently interrupt the original ridges. Strangely, the damage can become another distinctive feature. This stability is one reason fingerprints became so useful for identification. But identification is not why fingerprints originally exist. Evolution did not anticipate police investigations. And it certainly did not anticipate smartphones. The biological purpose must be much older. The most familiar explanation is simple. Fingerprints help us grip. At first, that makes perfect sense. A smooth fingertip seems as though it should slip more easily. Raised ridges seem as though they should increase friction. Our primate ancestors also depended heavily on physical contact with their environment. They climbed. They grasped branches. They handled food. Later human ancestors increasingly manipulated tools. So grip appears to be an obvious evolutionary advantage. But the science is more complicated. Friction depends on the material being touched. It depends on pressure. Moisture matters. Surface texture matters. And friction ridges do not necessarily increase friction under every condition. So fingerprints cannot be reduced to one simple sentence about grip. Their ridged structure may contribute to how skin interacts mechanically with different surfaces. Sweat released through pores along the ridges may also affect contact conditions. But another important clue comes from our sense of touch. Close your eyes. Run a finger dip across a piece of fabric. Then move it across glass. You immediately know they are different. Your fingertip is not merely touching the surface. It is collecting information. Beneath your skin are specialized sensory receptors. As your finger moves across a textured object, the skin deforms and vibrates. Those mechanical changes stimulate sensory systems beneath the surface. Friction ridges can influence the mechanical signals produced during contact. Your nervous system processes those signals, and your brain reconstructs information about the object. Smooth, rough, fine, coarse, slippery. Your hands are constantly sampling the physical world. Friction-ridged skin may therefore contribute to a combination of tactile sensing and controlled surface interaction. That brings us back to the clue beneath your feet. Your toes do not spend their day holding coffee cups. Your soles do not manipulate pencils. Yet they also contain friction-rich skin. This makes more sense when we look deeper into our evolutionary history. Humans belong to the primate family tree, and friction ridges are not uniquely human. Other primates have specialized, ridged skin on their hands and feet as well. Imagine an ancestral primate moving through trees. Hands repeatedly contact branches. Feet do the same. A secure interaction with those surfaces matters. So does information about texture, pressure, and movement. Over evolutionary time, friction-ridged skin became part of this sophisticated contact system. Human evolution later transformed the roles of our hands and feet. Our hands became extraordinarily specialized for precise manipulation. Our feet became increasingly specialized for upright walking. But both retained friction-ridged skin, inherited through our primate ancestry. Today we use fingerprints for purposes evolution never intended. Investigators compare ridge details to help identify people. Biometric systems turn those same patterns into digital information. But their deeper story began long before technology, and even before birth. Your genes helped create the conditions, development shaped the details, and evolution gave friction-ridged skin its long biological history. The result is written across your fingers, your toes, your palms, and the soles of your feet.